good.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the MHP Show podcast. I'm your host, Derek Vickers. We talk about mobile home parks on the MHP Show, and I have Mr. Glenn Yaney with me with Vertical Equity Partners here. What's up, man?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude, definitely. And we're doing this live, and hope it doesn't freak you out.
Me, I might mess up a little bit.
That's okay. It's all good, man. It's all good. So, I always mess up. You know, it's funny. Like if you have people edit the podcast, they're like, "Hey, I'll go through and take out the ums," and so I'm like, "Dude, just let it ride." Like, we don't need to spend. You know, my team doesn't need to spend hours editing the damn thing. So, anyways, man. So awesome, dude. So, you know, the reason why I love chatting with you and Garrett, one of the reasons because you guys are super cool. Number one, easy to talk to. And two, you guys are like, you know, the only people I know that are crazy enough to take on like the level of value add projects that I'm willing to take on. And I love that about you guys.
Yeah, I think me and Garrett combined would create Derek Vickers.
Yeah, dude. I mean, look, I love it, man. And I love like, you know, you have to be willing to go in and roll your sleeves up on some of these things. Like, you know,
Yeah.
have you ever like, is there a perfect park out there that you're not going to pay a 4 cap for?
We haven't found one. No, we
Me either.
don't.
Me either. Me either. So how did you get started? Like, how'd you get started in this wild business?
I mean, I tell this story regularly because I feel like I think it's pretty relatable. And I started at Red Lobster and just was tired of being poor. And I
Mm,
thought that I actually got my insurance license and Obamacare was just rolling out. I met with some life insurance guys and they were like, you need to get financial education. So then they told me to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then I got into Dave Ramsey. But anyways, long story short, I figured out that I had to save $50 a week to get my real estate license. And well, I got my insurance license, and then I realized I didn't want to do insurance, and I got into real estate. So then I
mm,
saved $50 a week. It took me a while to get to $1,000, and got into real estate. Within the first 6 months, there was all the institutions were buying up all the single family homes, so it's very hard to find like a first time home buyer a house. So I
mm-hmm.
started getting into rentals, started showing all the rentals in the area. I became like an expert of all the rentals in the area. It was like one of those jobs that you have to work hard, and you could make $0. And there would be times where I'd have all my commissions stacked up, where I'm thinking I'm going to walk away this week with $1,000, and every single one would fall through.
I
And
know that. I know how that goes.
so it's like I'm superstitious. So the second it moves from one pile to the completed pile and it's not completed, guaranteed it's going to fall through. So
Yep.
I literally never count it before it's done.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I ended up finding a big institution that was doing third party. They were buying up all these houses in the area. They had about 100 houses vacant, and they needed an agent to show the properties. And I just started trying to be that third party agent that would show the properties for them. And they were paying $500 to $1,000 a deal. And in the first month, I ended up making $15,000. And my pay was like $1,500 at Red Lobster a month, and I took and made $15,000 the next month at working for this company. And I was working at Red Lobster at night and showing properties during the day.
Wow.
And they ended up recruiting me, bringing me on staff, and there was 10 of us that were working in the office. And they in 6 months we had a big lease up, so then we didn't have as much vacancy. So then they actually cut the staff down from 10 to 3, and managed to make the cut. Within that a short period of time, 2 of the other 3 people quit, and I ended up with 100 listings in my own name. and learn how to lease houses. That was my main thing. I just focused on occupancy, focused on the oldest houses, and became like number one leasing agent in the country.
Wow.
Uh,
So
and
let me ask you this real
go
quick.
ahead.
So you were making $1,500 a month at
Hmm.
Red Lobster.
Yeah, living
What
with my
year was this?
parents.
What year was this?
2012.
Okay. And then so then you went and you bumped it up and you made 15 grand 1 month after that.
Yep.
So what so I'm curious because when I remember I was freaking broke and I was got in the insurance business and got my first like, $1,000, $1,500 commission in one strike. And I was like, man, dude, I've never seen four figures in an account. So what did that feel like going from 1,500 a month to 15,000?
So there's this story of or this experience that I've had. I got my first check was $3,000 from this company, and I couldn't wipe the smile off my face. I was so happy. And then after that I got a $6,000 check, and I was pretty happy. It's just like, man, this is unbelievable. And you always feel like the other shoe's going to drop or whatever.
Yeah.
And I could tell you that I got a check the like a couple weeks later for $2,000 or $3,000, and it was just like, all right, whatever, let's get another one. It just you get desensitized by it, but pretty quickly and used to it. And I learned then that it was what I would tell you is that I just try to keep my finances. I did it for about 5 years afterwards. I kept my
Mm.
finances at Red Lobster income. you know,
Yeah.
I just saved every penny as I could.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very smart because a lot of people don't do that.
No, no.
Well, that's cool, man. I mean, I think, I never worked in a restaurant, but well, I take that back. I did work in a restaurant for like 2 weeks. I was a bus boy in college, and then they literally stopped putting me on the schedule. So I was like, I must have been really shitty at that job because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't,
yeah.
I did, so I don't know that much about the restaurant business, but I know that that's like you learn valuable skills in doing that. So, all right. So you were leasing. How did this, venture turn into trailer park investing?
About 2 or 3 years into it, I met someone. His name's Randy. He actually owned 2,000 apartment units, and I'm not sure. I don't think I didn't sign up for it, or I didn't like ask him or anything. But we just started. He just became my mentor, and I'd go over to his house on Tuesday night, and we'd eat steaks and watch Fox News, and just talk about real estate. And I'd complain about my job, and he'd tell me why I'm wrong. And
Mm,
he pretty much taught me everything I knew about real estate and supply and demand. I know it
yeah.
sounds very simple, but I would like, here's an example. Like, so with the single family homes, it was a business that's never been, institutionalized until like 2012. So, or 2012, 13. And I would be complaining about these. I'm like, man, if they could just lease these houses, they're 60 days old, or some of them are up to 6 months old. And he would just say small lines to me like, you know, if maybe they haven't figured out the real price of those houses yet. And because he
Mm,
thinks as an asset manager, and I'm thinking as an employee, and I'm like, I need to get my paycheck. And
yep.
so he gave me the pricing thing where I started working with the pricing department way more than I should have as like usually the pricing department for REIT doesn't really talk to leasing. They're just like looking at the metrics and seeing what they should price it at. But I would be like having these weekly conference calls with this pricing department. They were teaching me how they understand the numbers. And then once I really started understanding the numbers and how they figure it out, then I could speak their language. And then I was able to get the prices lowered when they really needed to be lowered. Like it was what they were looking for. I looked for those metrics and then I waited for that. And then we got the prices lowered to get the properties moved. And that was kind of how I got into really getting into asset management and understanding how operations work.
Yeah. 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 No, that's great. I mean, operations is like a super, 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 important part of this business.
Yeah, yeah,
And if like, I learned it on the fly,
yep,
and made a lot of mistakes in the process. But it's actually, once you get in and you realize all the stuff that doesn't work, and you start systematizing things, it's actually, I don't want to say it's easy, but you have to be quite organized to keep it going successfully,
yeah,
right? And you guys have clearly done that. So you run, do you handle operations?
yeah. So, yeah, Garrett, he's a deal maker for sure. When it comes to negotiation, I'm like, if he's negotiating, I'm always like cringing to see that those offers, and I'm the guy that just you know I don't consider myself organized, but I do see myself as a perfectionist, and I like to think of when we have problems, I always like to think, instead of like thinking I'm a failure, I think of the first question is, how do we make this from happening again? How do we stop this from
Hmm.
recurring over and over and over? And let's put a stop gap, whatever, for that problem. We need to make sure, if we had, I mean, I could tell you we've made lots of mistakes, but here's one mistake. We had this park for probably 6 months, and you know it was like 6 months in that we realized that there was one vacant, and we opened up the doors and it was freshly remodeled, like brand new, like it was the nicest bathroom I've ever seen in a mobile home. And I'm just like, this has been sitting here for 6 months. And it's literally like, how do we keep this from happening? Those are the lessons you make. You buy, we bought 200 units in like a short period. So it's like, we're just trying to fix the fires before you get to the details.
Yeah, yeah, and that's, it's interesting. Like what we started doing in situations like that, because we actually, when we really started getting in and honing in on operations, we realized, like, we took the seller's rent roll at face value, right? Which was dumb. So we put that in our system, and anybody we moved in, we obviously moved in. But then when we did, some grunt work and had people like our team start going house by house, we found out that there was people living there that we had no, like, like, they were paying under the old person's name, right?
Yeah.
So like, kind of the same thing, but we now, our team, once we close, we go door to door, right? Hey, is your name such and such? What's your phone number? What's your email? We try to get as much information as we can,
Yep.
because the data is important. And you don't want to take, I mean, even professional operators, we've bought parks from people that are, quasi professional, and same shit, right? And so it's important to have the data correct, because
So
that's,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I'll tell you about a mistake we just made recently, and it's I would say me and you were kind of in the same position, but the office comes to you and they're like, I have a big problem. And you're like, okay, big problem. What does that mean? Does that mean 20,000? Are we talking about 10,000?
Yeah.
And they're like, and then they tell you, and it's generally, this problem was kind of a big problem, but the way the rent roll showed is that the old owner sold us the property, and he kept some of the mortgages under his name is what he did. And
For the houses,
for
for
the
the home.
houses, a
Yeah.
couple of them. And the way it sounded is that he pretty much had like half of them. And I was just like, oh, this is terrible. And so we start digging in, and I call the owner, because you get after the deal, you actually become more friendly with the owner because you're just trying to make sure things roll over nicely. And he's like, yeah, I told you that at closing, before closing. You're like, no, that would have stuck out to me. But so long story short, it was only one mortgage that he had, and it was a crazy, like, he was selling this mobile home that we yeah, he sold it for like 30,000 to this person. And
Hmm.
it was just one of those things that this from that mistake, it actually wasn't as big as I assumed it was going to be. It turned into a small one, but you're like, okay, how do we make sure that never happens again? And we're going
Yeah.
to make sure that we count every title, where it goes, and all the places where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think there's another like point in there too. Typically, in my experience, like when you experience a problem that you've never experienced before, at the beginning of it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so huge, right? But after you go through it and after you solve it, you realize it's not that big of a deal. And we just had this happen today. Like we just closed on a new property, and of course, on the freaking grasshopper line, we get waters out. I'm like, oh great, that's awesome. So I remember the first park where the water went out. I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, the water's out. Like it's the end of the effing world. But now, we just stay calm. We have a process and we go handle the problem. Right. And so it's just interesting, right? How you handle, like the first time you experience the problem, it's huge. And the other thing from what you said, I'll take is that staff,
Yeah.
definitely tenants, when they come to you with problems and they're like, oh my God, this is freaking huge. Okay, what is it? And I'm like you, my first thing is like, how much is it going to cost?
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you have to analyze that. And I think what you said is great. You have to remain calm and, see what the problem is and work out a solution.
I would say, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about the first like unsatisfactory health department violation I've received, and
Mm-hmm.
then you were like, oh, they're going to shut our whole park down. They're going to condemn us. That's where your mind takes you,
Yeah.
and then they call it harborage, which is like somebody that's
Yeah.
clutter. It's like trash around the unit, and it's like it might even be like a old refrigerator next to the unit that it needs to go, and you're like thinking that it's just like such a big deal that, oh, health department's all over us, and or a code violation, those happen. And
Yeah.
it's just like, now you just look at it, you're like, well, what's the code violation? You're like, they're mad because there's holes in the wall of the trailer. You're like, okay, let's go
Mm-hmm.
fix them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
let's go figure
Right.
it out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And I remember my first experience with a code violation. I was like freaking out. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And then you learn pretty quickly in this business that it's just a part of the business.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's interesting. So what do you like, when you guys are looking at deals, where is like where how are you looking at deals? Like what is the deal where you're like, hey, I think we can take this on?
Yeah. So I think kind of what you were saying, it's like almost where, and I feel like the market may shift a little bit, but it's almost like where you buy this, you have to, we look at deals that it's like, who are we competing with? Is really the question. So it's like, am I going to be competing with some institution that's going to you know, pay super high prices, or are we looking at something that's a value add, like a real value add, not I'm going to raise rents, I'm going
Mhm.
to, we're going to go in and it's almost like, what I can tell you is that sometimes the investors ask this, and I feel kind of uh, like maybe I'm missing something, but they'll be like, what's the entry cap rate? And you're like, well, unfortunately, the cap rate doesn't matter because whatever's happening here is going to get turned upside down. And then we're
Yeah.
going to restructure it, redo all the stuff with it, and then we're going to run it efficiently. It's why. So the entry cap rate is kind of like, what's the price of the land is what we're looking at, and what's going to be the cost per unit, and then what's going to be the cash on cash return after all that. So it's that's kind of how we like to look at it. I think it's, we've learned through other operators, listening to guys like you and hearing kind of what other people do, and we found a good little stride of, that when we buy these park owned homes, properties, it's like immediately, there's a lot of inefficiencies,
For sure.
just because from our own mistakes, and I know you've looked at some of our portfolios. we have these, we held on to every park owned home because we thought these things are cranking out cash. And then you realize how much maintenance comes with those mobile homes that you're like, the this is not reality. Like the reality is that the lot rent should be a certain price. And
Yeah.
if you actually did the real accounting for every washer or every stove, every pipe leak, you know every roof leak, the things that just constantly happen, you're just better off just selling them, collecting the cash up front, and just getting the best lot rent you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, agreed. I mean, because you don't, when you're in the thick of it, you're like, yeah, just have them go fix it. Yeah, just have them go fix it. Yeah, just have them go fix it. And then when you look at
Yeah.
the P&L, you're like, damn, dude. Like, because we've had park-owned homes. Like, we've had park-owned homes that we've kept. And, like, of
Yeah.
course, when something happens with the tenant, it's a freaking fire drill, of course, every time.
Yeah.
It's the end of the world. So I agree with you, man. And I think from what you said, backing up a couple minutes about the cap rate thing, it's like I've had to have the same conversation with
Yeah.
investors. What's the going in cap rate? Well, it's this, but like kind of doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, it's
it's
hard to calculate the expenses on
yeah,
those on the value add ones. You're like, yeah, but we're talking about park owned homes to lot rent. That's totally different values and also expenses that go with it. So if you want to really add in all the expenses, you're talking about, and who knows what if you can call it capex on the balance sheet, but if you go out and renovate these units and try to hold on to them for park owned home reasons, the value's not there. It's still in the lot rent is what I would say. Like we put like $10,000 to $15,000 in a trailer, and then we go and sell the trailer for like maybe $10,000 to $15,000 later, or maybe 20,000 or something like that. It's like
yeah,
it's it's like the values in the lots. Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Because I mean, yeah, you're putting a bunch of money into them, but also you got to manage it,
Yeah.
like that project, and make sure. I mean, you know how some of these contractors are. And you find good ones after a while, but you still have to do a little babysitting.
Hey, I got a question for you. So for you, I know that you stick to certain markets, but I know that you have some that are kind of out. Like when you go into a new market, how do you go about finding a contractor to work with you that isn't gonna, you're just waiting to get screwed is really what you're just like, this is not, you got to go through two or three before you start.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what I've learned is that I'll find other people that are in that market in the
Yeah.
industry
Hmm.
and maybe get some referrals from them. Or one other strategy is I find like three and then I'll give them a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Because where these guys go bad and where shit gets crazy is when you give them, you're like, oh, this guy's good. You give him a bunch of work and then shit starts messing up, right? And so you have to like on a gradient, hey, we'll give this guy some work. Hey, we'll give this guy some work. Hey, because these are typically smaller contractors, right? Because you're not going to use the big guys because they charge a premium to come do, our jobs that may not be big enough.
Yeah.
So you have to use kind of a mom and pop contractor to a degree, and you just can't give them too much work. Like, I think that's the thing, because when they get overextended, then they have to start hiring, $10 an hour guys. And then the work, so I've found that I find a few and then just on a gradient, I give them a little bit, give them a little bit. And I never like say, oh, this is a great contractor. Let's give them all the work anymore. I just don't do that anymore because it's just, even the guys that are really good get overextended.
I could tell you that at my company, I work for American Homes for Rent. Probably shouldn't say their name, but I did. But anyways,
Can't believe it out. Can't
yeah,
believe
it's
it
all
out.
right. It's a great company, and I could tell you their efficiencies are impressive. They have this thing where they have like a 7-day turn time. So the day you move out is the day 7 days into it, the property will be rent ready again, a whole house, single family.
Hmm.
So, anyways, but they would get contractors in the same story, but these guys are like scalable contractors where they go through and they knock it out. But the same story, So even at the highest level, you have these guys that are operating at the highest level as well, and the most professionally. They still can't keep up with just giving them all the work. And then eventually what happens is they become in charge with the pricing. So then
Mm.
that's been my experience. We're kind of dealing with it now, right now, with one of our guys. He's really good, great guy. And I still think he's a great vendor of ours. It's just that we've just got to pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah.
We got to find one other crew because this guy is so busy that he's like leaving jobs not finished, and
Yeah.
then it turns into a resentment between me and that guy because we're like, hey man, like you're doing a great job, but you got to finish. We just
Yeah.
paid you. You're not afraid of them not finishing. It's just like, but this person's moving in, so you gotta get it
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah, and I couldn't like you hit it right there because that same stuff has happened to me. We had a contractor who's a great guy, still, he's a great guy, but we're like, because it was easy, like, oh, we can go with this guy, we can keep this
yeah,
guy, we can use him. I don't have to freaking think about it anymore. We just give him the work, right? And of course, for you and I, Glenn, that's the easy thing to do. But you still have to you got to keep up with these guys because as you said, they're great. But even we had same thing, like jobs were getting unfinished, and like it was, something was supposed to be done a month ago is still like lingering, not done. And then you're right, you get pissed off, and you're like, screw this guy.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it turns into where you start setting structures in place so they don't do it to you again. Then they get upset with you, and then they start declining or doing less, and it's just yeah, it's just better to diversify your contractors.
yeah, absolutely. And like, if you're listening to this, like, you're going to have to do some project managing until you get to scale and you can hire that out, or you're hiring like high quality regional managers that can do some project management for you. But other than that, you're going to have your finger on it in the beginning because you'll get screwed over. I mean, I'll just go ahead and tell you.
Yeah. So how did you with yours? Do you have somebody in place for that, or is it still you?
No, I still do some of that. And, we have some higher quality people on our team in our office that can help with some of that stuff too. And it's still, not perfect. I mean, but now we don't have that many projects. I mean, 2 years ago, we
Yeah.
probably should have hired a project manager, like for sure. But now it's just, we don't really need them anymore. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was tough, man. I mean, projects going on at freaking 15 different parks, and it just gets crazy and stuff falls between the cracks. So it's tough. It's tough. So, but yeah, dude. So what's next for you guys? You guys still? I know you guys are buying in Florida. You guys
Yep.
plan on going out of Florida?
Yeah, I think we actually have a deal that's a little further away, about 3 hours away. It's still in Florida, but we're going to we have some control issues, I guess, that we have to we have to be able to get there in one day. And we're gonna what I would say is that we're just starting to pivot to maybe find something that's a little further away, figure out how to operate it um, remotely, and and if there's a real problem, it's 3 hours away, so we can have our guys go up there if there's a problem. Maybe it's not ripping the band-aid off, but at the same time, it still tells me that I'm like, we could still take care of this. If there's a real problem, we'll get guys and either fix up a mobile home, get them moved in to fix up the other trailers, or hotel, or most likely fix up a mobile home though. But
Yeah.
yeah, get them out there if that's the case. We've done that just recently. It was like an hour and a half drive, not far enough to really. We're still working on those efficiencies. Now we're looking at another deal that's about 3 hours away.
Yeah. 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 And the control factor, I'm with
Yeah,
you, dude. I like to, I like to be able to go there, within a day. Like if I had to go to a park right now, if it's 3 hours away, I can go if I need to. Right. And I do like that aspect, but and you've probably experienced this. How many times, if you're like, okay, I got to go to the park today, you drive to the park and you're there and you're like, why am I here? Like, I'm just sitting. Like, there's nothing. Like, what am I? Why am I here?
Yeah. I think we talked about the same exact thing we talked about on my podcast with you, but yeah, I found myself doing that, and then I kind of got into me and Garrett. We used to get in the car, and I could tell you that the funny thing, we have this joke, but we know where every Longhorn Steakhouse is because they're all close to our mobile home parks for whatever reason, and we kind of distinguish. There's this one area we were trying to go for a park is out in Lake City, and I was like, "There's a Longhorn Steakhouse right there." I was like, "So
Mm.
we could look at this park and then eat at Longhorn Steakhouse and then come home," you know? So, but no, yeah, it's definitely one of those things that with, like I said, back with my experience at the last job, they had a built out system of field superintendents, guys that oversaw everything, and those guys still need constant supervision. You have to have somebody always following behind them. So Garrett, his background is actually in construction, and he's used to build commercial real estate like schools, high rises, and so he's got construction in his background. So he's kind of our construction guy. He likes to go out in the field as well, and then just me, I try to stay at my computer as much as possible because I feel like I'm more efficient there.
Yeah, yeah. And Garrett looks like a construction guy. He
He
does.
gets it done.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think too, like that's a good point. Like for if you're looking to buy parks, scaling parks, like operations, like it's not just being on the ground, right? It's being in the back, organizing and getting everything set up. And that's like one of the mistakes that I made in the beginning. I wasn't spending enough time doing that. I thought I just needed to be on site and managing projects and doing that stuff, which you did need to do, but there has to be a balance between you handling, back end stuff, rent manager.
Yeah.
Um, you have to have a balance between that stuff. And it's not easy. You were going to say something, Glenn?
What I would say is, from my experience, I feel like I have actual more control when I'm at my computer. When I'm driving out in the field, I feel so far behind when I get to my computer. I'm like, I don't know what I did do. I went to this, say we'll go to this property. We'll know that one property is good, but say we have about, we'll say 29 properties. It could be small units and stuff like that, but there's 29 properties. So I made sure one property is good, but there's 28 other properties moving around. And
Mm-hmm.
what we have, what we started doing is we started we created an office, a virtual office. So we have like offshore people that help us, like virtual assistants that pretty
Yeah.
much, we created an office that way. So there's a lot of things that are done in a property management office that could all be done remotely, almost
Yeah.
all of it. And then I have like an office manager, and then I have, we call our assistant property manager. And that assistant property manager, her job is like quality control. And every month we have to have pictures of every single unit, and not every unit, but she goes through, and she'll take pictures of anything that needs to be fixed. And
Mm.
we have a full-time maintenance guy, and she'll go through, and if it's on us to take care of, she'll put that on his list. And then if it's for the resident to take care of, she'll make a notice to make sure that they take care of it. And that's kind of like our quality control aspect of it. And lots of pictures. We just tell everyone to take lots of pictures, and that's been helpful.
Yeah. So they go around and your assistant property manager will go to each park and like, hey, oh, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed, and that
Yeah,
sort
so
of thing.
she's also in charge of showing units. So
Okay.
she shows units, so she won't have to make like a specific trip to go to a park that we just bought, because she goes there all the time. She's going to be out there all the time, make sure that things are normal. But then you have the stabilized parks that if you don't stay on top of, they'll start to become hoarders and trash creates more trash. You can't tell somebody to clean up their trash when their neighbor has a broken down car in their yard. So you have to make sure that it's a whole, like, everybody's treated fairly. No, nothing outside. And the way I look at it is that those parks that are perfect, the ones that we don't buy, I always think to myself, those don't have any trash outside. These 55 plus parks, there's zero clutter, nothing on their porch. And I was like, so if they can do it, then our parks can do it too. So it's like, we just have to break the mentality that they have nowhere else to put it. It's like, well, these other parks that are selling for $100,000 a pad, they're able to do it, and I'm not sure what they're doing, but we need to figure that out. So
Yeah. How do you guys do that? Because I know, some of these parks, when you buy them, people got a lot of shit.
yeah,
You got to clean it up. So what's your guys' process of like handling that?
generally it's a phone conversation at first, but they always the conversation is more like, hey, we have this is against code. The city doesn't want this. If health department went in there, they would pick us apart on it. So we have to make sure that this is getting cleaned up. And all the neighbors are getting calls right now. You're not the only one. So we just want to make sure we're going to drop off a dumpster. When we first buy it, we always drop off a dumpster and say, hey, fill that dumpster up put the tires outside the dumpsters and then fill it up with everything else, and we want it. I want that thing full. I told him, I said, I'd be happy to get 5 dumpsters out of that place,
Yeah. And then their
Just-
roofing buddy comes in and drops
uh,
off their scrap materials for the
haven't
rest
had that
of the
problem
day.
yet. Haven't had that. We try to stay on top of the dumpsters. We don't, it's not like it's generally when we have people on site all the time, but it'll be like say there's a construction going on right next door that we're fixing up a trailer. Hey, if you feel it necessary, throw your couch in there, whatever you got to do. Let's just get rid of it. Don't throw it next to the actual trash dumpster like everyone else does. Like, it's like I don't know where these mattresses come from, but they're
I
everywhere. It's
don't
like it
either.
rains mattresses every day. I don't know what
It's
happens.
crazy, man. And like I think because of in Tampa, dude, it's like we literally have a lady that runs around Tampa at the parks and just cleans shit up by the dumpster. Like,
Yeah.
because I don't know, because it's an urban location or whatnot. Like, it's just, I mean, every Monday, we know it's going to
Yeah.
be piled up
Yeah.
and stuff everywhere.
We bought a utility trailer for that. Yeah, we got a utility trailer. We have the one maintenance guy that drives around. Once a week he drives around, and yeah, it's amazing how much
Yeah.
trash accumulates quickly.
Yeah, it does. It does. And this is just, it's like little stuff as an operator. You have to like figure out processes and how you're going to handle that because um, trash doesn't make your park look good.
No.
And code enforcement doesn't like that. And the goal is to like, keep them out of there because, they're just not fun to deal with.
What I'll say is they probably I know they love us, and they probably love your operation as well, because we're literally doing whatever they say. Like, we just say, okay, yeah,
That's
we'll
true.
do it. Yeah, let's do it. Like, we're not going to argue with you. You're right. We don't want it there either, and we want to make sure it gets taken care of. So then after like about 3 to 6 months, they tend to just give us a phone call before the notice. Hey, we just need this done, and it's not such an issue at that point. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's more of like, the mom and pops that we buy from.
yeah,
They're the ones that flip the bird to code enforcement. And they're like, yeah, you know what? We're just going to let it roll. And I don't know why that is. I mean, obviously, it's some apprehension and like they don't like government, which
well,
I get it.
they're burnt out is what it is.
Yeah.
They're tired of spending money. They own them park owned homes, and those park owned homes will take every penny from you over time. It's amazing. We spend 15 grand on a trailer, and then the turn costs 5 grand, and you're like, really? Are we spending 5 grand on this right now? It's like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah.
As an
Yeah.
owner that doesn't have the money, if it's your only park, you don't have. I'm not doing $5,000. I'm just clean it up, sweep it up, and move somebody in.
Clean it up, throw some paint on it, and move
Yeah,
on. Yeah, I
exactly.
think it's interesting too. Like Aloha Mark from Hawaii. It's freaking early over there. But yeah, so these mom and pop sellers, it's just, I got a guy that I've been working on trying to get him to sell. And he's always like, Derek, man, I need to get rid of these rentals like you did. And I'm like, well, you've been saying that to me for 4 years and haven't done it. I think they think that obviously they see the top line, and the top line may look a little better, right? And they don't have the financials to even know what the bottom line is.
It's painful when you look at that. You look at a T12. I mean, we speak from experience, or I speak from experiences where you look at a T12 and you're like, really? I thought we did pretty good. It's like shows that negative line. I was like, we gotta sell these units, and it turned into it was like, I think it was you that we spoke to about the one park that you ended up. It was in a really nice area. You charge $1,000 a month lot rent, and I just thought to myself, my first thought is, there's no way that you could get $1,000 a month. And I thought, well, Derek's doing it, and that would tell me, well, then that's a limiting belief. It's like, maybe just like my idea of the 60 uh, of the single family homes that I work for, we just have to find the pricing because we've been working with mom and pops for so long. This is,
Yeah,
bring it to the next level, and maybe to bring the park up to where it should be, and also to where it can operate to be clean, safe, and functional. The lot rent has to come up.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, for sure. I mean, with the increases in prices and stuff, I mean, to me, the market lot rent is what is a large group of people willing to pay? It's
Yeah.
not what, Johnny down the street has been charging for 25 years. And then, his friend Steve has been charging the same thing for 25 years. And they're full and the park's a disaster. Does not mean that's the market lot rent. What is someone willing, what will someone pay? Right? And I just think I think it's funny because there's still a lot of people in the business that, they still, oh yeah, well, in this market, it's so and so. And I'm like, okay. When people tell me, I don't even listen. I just okay, I'll look at the deal and determine what the market is.
Yeah. I've never. It's impossible to listen to like a broker or any. It's, you got to have the same incentives aligned. They're selling you the park, or the seller's selling you the park, so they're going to tell you whatever they can to get you to pay the most for it.
For
So
sure. For sure. A guy that we just bought from, I didn't tell him this before we closed, but I was like, I forget what we were talking about. And we we're like, yeah, congratulations on closing. And he's like, we got on something a lot around. I'm like, well, you know what the people are charging down the street? And he's like, no. And I told him, and he's like, are you freaking kidding me? Which is like double what he was charging.
yeah.
And so these guys don't know, and I don't think, unfortunately, I mean, there's good brokers out there, but a lot of them don't even know because they're not actually in the market. They're just looking on their
Yeah.
system, and
Mhm.
it says that it's this. Okay, it's this, which is not always the case.
Yeah, I don't even know how they would get that. Yeah. I've never actually had somebody call me with lot prices, except for Derek. Derek's called me. That's how we talked this week.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did call you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's interesting. So, any other things you want to leave people with here before we head out?
Yeah, I just think that these podcasts are great. I would say that listening to them keep me motivated, and I would say that whatever anybody's listening to, just always have an action of improvement. So if you listen to these podcasts and don't do anything about it, that means that you're really not getting anything out of it. But if you listen to them, and it might not be buy a mobile home park. It will be like, how do I save my first $50 or $1,000 to get to that real estate license that I need to get to make more money? Those kind of things. And I'm sure there's some people that could, how do you save $50,000 to put towards something? It's like, I could not have 12 years ago, or I couldn't have even thought of like how you would have been able to invest 50,000 or 100,000. My first investment in real estate was, I think, 10,000. And, so it's like it slowly accumulates. And when I also say that, comparing myself to somebody else, like I could compare myself to Derek and think, I'm such a loser. No, I'm just kidding. But I think
You're
about
not
it.
a
I'm like,
loser, Glenn.
no. What I was thinking, I could say like, Derek's got all these mobile home parks. He's doing deals. He's raising money. It's like, why can't I keep up, or something like that? And what I would say is, there's always going to be somebody that's doing better. And there's other guys out there that are, that we were talking about before, like they might have 3,000 units, and there's always somebody that's going to have more. It's just finding the balance, and you know, just enjoying your life where you're at today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally. And I think it's like, you're right. It is a balance of being, satisfied but dissatisfied at the
Yep.
same time. Like unfortunately, I think I cannot. It's so hard for me to be satisfied, because it's the same thing. I'll look at somebody and I'm like, God, dude, we gotta pick it the hell up. Like, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing this? And my team probably just wants to frickin'. I'll just rampage one day on our Slack channel. Guys, let's get this done today. Like, we need this now. And it's I think it's healthy. But at times I think it's like, it's never like, when's it gonna stop? When is it gonna stop?
I
Right?
think for me, I always can reflect in saying, at least I'm not working at Red Lobster. So
Oh, boom,
yeah.
boom.
So I think everybody's got the job that they were at, that they were like, this is better than that. So
That's
just
true.
be grateful.
Yeah, true, true. Well, Glenn, it's always great talking to you, man. It's always good, man. I know we chatted earlier this week, and always have good conversations. So, if you want to reach out to Glenn, he's on LinkedIn. Where else are you?
My favorite place is the Millionaire Journey podcast. I interview guys like Derek Vickers. I talk about real estate a lot. I try to get outside that topic, but it's so hard for me to talk to people about other stuff. But we talk about personal finances, but mainly real estate, income producing. Very little 401k talk, and we focus on improving and getting your cash flow up.
Yeah, where is that? You're on iTunes, right?
Yeah, I think I'm on Spotify, iTunes. Yeah, I think they're on all the major platforms.
Cool, cool. Well, Glenn, thank you for joining the MHP show today, and we will be. I think, well, you can go back and listen to this episode, but we'll be back on next week. And I loved doing this live so much that I did it again with Glenn. And so maybe we'll continue to do them live. I don't know. It just feels a little more lively when it's live.
Authentic.
Yeah, feels a little more authentic. So thank you, everybody. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you.